I see myself doing that with my kids of like, what are you doing? Like, you're taking like 2 hours to do something that could take 10 minutes. Like, no, we gotta work harder.
Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of TMI Advice You Didn't Want. Today we're talking about kids. Kids are kids. It's an interesting topic because we were talking about this on one of our podcasts recently. But how do you teach kids to have a really good work ethic while teaching them the balance of not working too hard? Like
Hmm.
this is a I feel like this is a really sticky anything to do with kids in my opinion is sticky because there's always going to be some sort of trauma that can result. Doesn't have to, but it can result no matter what you do. So, anyways, in case we
Yeah.
haven't met, my name is Karen.
And my name is Ashley. And I think it's interesting because like you said, like it's about trauma. It's about how you're raised. So for me, like I was raised with high achieving parents. Like they wanted me to achieve a lot and be a certain thing. So I was meant to be like an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor. Like they really wanted me going in that train and looking a certain way, having straight A's was an expectation. Um, and like I will always remember when my dad was like, "Oh, you got 98%. If you would have tried a little bit harder, you could have got 100." And this is on a departmental grade 12 final, you know, like so a big thing in chemistry, like not like, you know, I don't know what subject is easy, but um and so then they own companies as well. And so they're farmers, they have a hard work ethic where they don't know how to take breaks. They don't know how to take holidays. Like for example, my dad had surgery 5 weeks ago for cancer, and then he drove like 6 hours to get something for work, like within like 2 weeks. And they just arrived to my house yesterday after driving, it would be 13 hours, and he's 5 weeks out and like they just don't know how to stop. And so when I grew up, like we would do yard work and like we were pushed hard to do good, hard work. Like if you like slowly carried the brick over, like it was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, like we go fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I see myself doing that with my kids of like, what are you doing? Like you're taking like 2 hours to do something that could take 10 minutes. Like, no, we gotta work harder. And then I got sick, um, and then I had an accident. And I was like, so both kind of initiated this. Like, so when I got sick, I was like, okay, I don't want to follow this line, like this um get a really good grades, get a really good university, get really good job. Like I didn't want to follow in that line. And then when I got sick the next time, I was like, you know what? Like I want to enjoy my time. Like sure I can wash dishes in 5 minutes, or I can wash dishes in 20 minutes and enjoy it. But also my body was so in pain. I had to learn to go slow. So then I unlearned that whole like super movement. But now I'm an adult trying to make my kids learn how to go fast, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, how, like, because I have it in me still. Like, if it's like, okay, I have to get this done in 5 minutes, I can engage and do it. But I want to be the person that stops and smells the roses. And I want to teach my kids both. And then my partner has never, he has had a back injury, but he's never been in a place where he's unlearned it. Like he had a back injury when he was 18, and then he got right back into like his work was his value in life. And if he couldn't work hard, he wasn't worth anything. And so he's the hardest worker, he gets stressed out, he works harder, like he puts himself into a place where it's really bad on his back because like he was beat, like legitimately beat by his parents to work harder. And I definitely didn't have that. So like it's like so ingrained in him. And so then too for him, when he sees the kids not using their brain and figuring out problems, which for both of us was a big thing, or not working hard and being lazy, or me taking my time and being lazy, which in quotations, it's not lazy, it's just enjoying the process. It's a trigger for him because he would have been beaten if he had done that. And so, yeah, so it's interesting. So he has a lot of trauma, and I just have a lot of programming.
Mm.
And then I unprogrammed, but it's still in me enough that I put it onto my kids.
Hmm.
So, anyways, that's
Yeah.
my long story of the back history of it all.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing though. Like, it's so hard in this 3D reality to figure out what that line is because
Mhm.
if you're talking about like the spirit world, you just have a thought and it's created. Like
Mhm.
it's literally like when you go to the void, when you're experiencing the quantum, when you're experiencing source, I don't care what you call it, it's the same fucking thing. But when
Mhm.
you're experiencing that, you just literally have the thought and the feeling at the same time and it creates it immediately because there
Mhm.
is no separation of time.
Mhm.
It's not a thing. Like in this 3D reality, time is a thing. Like because we're living in space time, we're not living in time space. So if we're sitting here and we're going, okay, well, it's going to take me 20 minutes to do the dishes. In time
Mhm.
space, time isn't a thing. It's literally irrelevant. And so it's so hard to navigate because we are the energy of time space, but we're also
Yeah.
the energy of space time. And
Yeah.
so it's this, I don't know, I feel like whether you're an adult or a kid, there's this battle of trying to figure out this dimension because
Mhm.
it does take time to do things. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to,
Yeah.
but a lot of us are not taught how to properly manifest, how to properly think and feel and keep that vibration, to
Mhm.
keep that going.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know, it's just more of a process here. And I think honestly, now that I'm talking this out, I feel like that's part of the process of why we wanted to come here. Because in time space, you just create, right? It's just there. But here, it's about learning how to enjoy the process. It's
Mhm.
about learning how to slow down. Um, and it's gonna be different. And so yeah, so now that I'm talking this out, I'm like, that's why we came here because we wanted to learn how to do that. We wanted to learn how to do it better.
Mhm.
So because I truly believe that we're all curious beings. If we are on this 3D plane, I truly believe that you're a curious being at heart.
Yeah.
And you may or may not have, like, you may not realize that because maybe you've shut it down through years of your own trauma, right? But I truly believe that that's part of the reason that we came here was so that we could slow down the process and actually see how it works on a 3D plane instead
Yeah.
of in a quantum that it just appears and it's just there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And that's like the power of now. Like, I really love that book. And that man that wrote it, like he talks about how he literally would just sit on a bench all day long. And like, yes, he did become homeless, so there is like that
Mm-hmm.
caveat. But it was by choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And I know of other people that have chosen to go homeless on purpose, or even like for myself, like be nomadic, which is homeless essentially as well. Um, and he did nothing for a long periods of time and has wrote, I believe, two best-selling New York Times best-selling books. Like it's all this like illusion of time
Mm-hmm.
and all that. I'm sure there's certain aspects where you need to learn how to be a hard worker if it's a desire you have. Like if you want to be an NHL player, you're probably going to have to learn a little bit more of that. And that comes to my son too. Like he is reading The Law of Success right now, by W. Clement and Napoleon Hill. And that's like a thing that we do for when they aren't acting appropriately or They want money. If they want money, they have to read a personal development book. Chores are a non-negotiable because we have to keep our house livable. But if they want money for allowance, they have to read. And so that's his book. And he decided that he's going to practice hockey every day to get better. And he's been watching his sister practice violin every day that she's with us and get significantly better and better over the last 8 months, I think it's been now. And he's like, every time she plays, he'll come upstairs to me and be like, wow, Aubrey's getting so good. So, anyways, he went and he started playing hockey in the basement and doing practice drills. And that was his thing after reading like chapter 2 of this book. And so every day he wants to do his practice drills. And he came up and he's like, I did them and I'm getting better. And he's like, I did it for 5 minutes. I'm like, well, your friends that play like legit hockey, they're practicing at like hockey for over an hour to 2 hours, multiple times a week. Plus, they're practicing at home for an hour a week. And so, like, Aubrey practices her violin for a minimum of an hour a week. So, you might want to up your game. Like, if it's something you're serious about, you might want to put more time into it. And that's what, like, all of Napoleon Hill talks about frequently is having an obsession.
Mm.
Like he's like, if you want something, get obsessed with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what the Power of Now guy did. He got obsessed with being present and then wrote books about it.
Well,
So,
I mean, as you're talking about that, it's you become obsessed with a certain frequency. So you
mhm,
become obsessed with a frequency of, in like the hockey case of being successful at hockey. There's a frequency of success there, right?
mhm,
So you become obsessed with that frequency. So it's the same thing as if you're in the void, in the quantum, and you have a thought and a feeling, and you've created that, and then you create what you want in the void. Here, it's keeping that sustained frequency over time, right? And it's part of the process, right? So, because you're gonna have days where it goes up and down, right? Like that's part of being in this particular 3D realm. But I really think, like, now that I'm talking this out, I'm like, damn, like I had this realization as we're talking. That's why we came here, because we wanted to be a part of that process,
mhm,
because it's like seeing the time and learning how to shorten that time too,
mhm,
how to just stay in it all the time. And I
mhm,
feel like this is something I've been really leaning into a lot. Um, and I can see my life changing as a result. Where in the past, I would have this obsession over what I wanted, right? Oh, I
mhm,
really want that. I'm going to do this in order to receive it, right? But I would have a lot more hills and valleys, like a
mhm,
ton of hills and valleys. Today, when I see the valleys, I'm like, fuck no, I don't want to be a part of that frequency. That doesn't
mhm.
feel fun.
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh yeah, but you can't just immediately change it. And it's like, well, I've been practicing to immediately change it. And
Yeah.
so, yes, I can, because I
Mhm.
have literally been putting in the energy to notice the thought and go, that's not what I want to feel. And so the valleys become pretty much like a oops. I had 5 minutes there where I felt bad for myself, and now I don't, right?
Yeah.
Like it didn't used to be like that. It used to be like this long drawn out day where I just feel like crap and didn't want to get out of bed, like
Mhm.
now I can literally just look at that feeling and go, wait a minute, I don't really want to feel like this. And
Mhm.
I notice when I'm like in certain environments that feeling comes up sooner, like say the hospital, for example. I
Yeah.
notice that feeling comes up sooner because I've created a neurological pathway in my brain for that to come up sooner. And so I literally, when I walk in the hospital, I remind myself what I don't want to think and how I
Mm.
don't want to feel. Like
Yeah.
that's the first thing I do. I
Mhm.
insulate myself with this little bubble of happiness. That's
Mhm.
literally like I imagine that, and then I think this is what I don't want to think. This is when I do notice myself thinking that way. This is what I want to start thinking immediately. And so
Yeah.
it's become less of a, I don't know, it's become less of a obsession over the wrong thing, right?
Mhm.
Because you can become obsessed with being depressed.
Hmm.
Hello. Like, does that hit hard to anybody? Like, I have been obsessed with being depressed and didn't even realize that I was obsessed with it. Right.
Yeah.
So it is about the obsession with a particular frequency and staying there.
Well, and I think that comes into play with so many things, like obsessed with being depressed, obsessed with having financial struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like if your money goes up and down like this, like that's how mine was when I first started going through network marketing in my like when I was 18. Like it was like huge, like, and that's what you talked about too in your business. Like you're obsessed with that, something along that journey, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, are you obsessed with struggling as a parent? Like, when I hang out with lots of parents, I can feel like how, like, you know, how there's like trends of like, oh,
Yes.
life is so hard as a mom,
Yes.
or oh, life is so hard. I have to work and do this and do that. And like, I do it too, but there's like it's kind of like you get like brownie points. The busier you are, the better
Ugh.
you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's still a thing, very
Yeah.
much so.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think for moms, there's like this um, like I don't know. I think parents in general, there's like this thing about how like you're struggling with your children. Like I'm struggling for them to wear proper clothing. I'm struggling with them to get off their screens. Like there's always something, and it's like you're addicted to the struggle, and then creating it. But yeah, anyways, there's so many things
Oh
like
my gosh. Yeah. I
like
mean,
looking at myself or my partner or the people that we have to interact with, like you can see like what is that person addicted to? Like what is that person wanting more of, but doesn't actually want more of? It's just their comfort space.
mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. So I was listening to this podcast yesterday, and this actually really fits in with the whole like kids and the work ethic and all of that. But she was talking about dopamine, and dopamine is a really magical kind of thing because dopamine is basically like our pleasure hormone, like something like good happens in our life, and we release dopamine. Like we like something, and so our body releases dopamine. And
Mhm.
so, one thing she was talking about was how in today's society, because everything is so easy, we can push a button and in like a day we'll have new clothes or whatever, like we can order things from Amazon and they'll be here tomorrow or they'll be here in a couple hours, just depending,
Mhm.
right? So it's like this hit of dopamine comes faster and faster and faster. And she was just talking about how um, that has basically hijacked our pleasure
Mhm.
sensory to the point where we have to have more of it. It's kind of like you give someone cocaine and after a while they need more, they need more, they need more in order to have more dopamine. I mean, that's really what they're running after is the dopamine because the dopamine makes them feel good, right? Or even alcohol, same thing. You drink a lot of alcohol, you're going to release a lot of dopamine, right? Like and so we've like hijacked our pleasure center, right? Like it's like now we just need more, 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 more. And this kind of goes back to like the whole work ethic thing. That doesn't
Mhm.
kind of, it absolutely does. Because like we're racing through life, right? Like you talked about how I could wash the dishes in 5 minutes, or I could have the kids wash the dishes in 5 minutes, or I can take pleasure in it taking 20 minutes, right?
Mhm.
We have lost the pleasure of things taking time, of enjoying the process, right? Because we've hijacked that pleasure center so much to think that it has to happen immediately, that it has
Mhm.
to happen right now, right? And so, like, looking at, I think that's really the key when it comes to like teaching kids a work ethic is
Mhm.
are you actually taking pleasure in what you're doing, or are you like I was for years, like I still have to stop myself and be like, I don't need to rush through this so that I could do something fun, like
Mhm.
that's part of the dopamine process, right? Where you're like, oh, if I hurry up and do all my chores, or if I hurry up and do all these things, then I can do something that sort of in a way numbs the pain, right? And allows me
Yeah.
to release a big thing of dopamine right away because that's what I'm used to. Right.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's just about unhijacking those pleasure centers and
Yeah.
going, okay, wait a minute. Like, it's okay that things are a process. It's okay
Yeah.
that things take time. Um, and one thing that she was saying too, and I 100% believe this in my core, is that a lot of times we are so uncomfortable being in the present moment of, say, washing the dishes, that we've forgotten that being uncomfortable is actually okay too. Right.
Hmm.
And so we talked about that a little while ago too, with like kids and work ethic too, and being like, oh, when I do gardening or whatever, it hurts me, right?
Hmm.
Like it hurts me to do that because I'm working, right? And like
Yeah.
we've forgotten that that is still a part of the process, and being uncomfortable is
Hmm.
also part of the process as well. And that's part of being in the present moment too, because let's be honest, like the present moment, it can be uncomfortable if you're not
Yeah.
used to it. If you're
Hmm.
not used to sitting in the present moment, it's like,
Yeah.
ooh, my body wants to get up. I want to move. I want to do something. Whereas like most of us are trained to get up and do something, right? Whereas sitting and doing nothing can sometimes be uncomfortable. Or how about this? How about an awkward silence, right? We've had a conversation, we've been talking for a while, and then suddenly there's nothing left to say, right? That's uncomfortable for so many of us, right? Because we don't have any sort of dopamine hit happening in that moment. And so
Yeah.
our body is like, I need more dopamine, I got to say something, right? And so that's when we say stupid things, right? So, and sometimes just being uncomfortable, that is where the beautiful things happen, and not seeking after that dopamine in our brains.
Yeah. Well, and that's something like with my partner, I used to be like, oh, like you're so good at being like present in the moment. And he is. Like he, for the most part, especially compared to me, doesn't live in the future or past tense. He lives very much in the present moment. But he dissociates a lot in the
Mm.
present moment. So it's kind of funny how
So
like
that makes me question too, if you're dissociating, you're not actually present because you're
no,
not
but like
here.
yeah, he's not in like a past future tense. Like I'm a very past future person, not a very present person. So like for me, I'm thinking about like, oh, what did we do in the past? Like that was really great, or I didn't like that. And I want to like talk it out. Like me and you talk out a lot of past stuff,
Hmm.
and we talk out a lot of future stuff,
Hmm.
like this is what's happened, this is what I want. And I'm a big, big Pisces dreamer. So I live very much in a dream world in the future. And so he's very much of like, this is our present moment. This is where we're at. This is our current state of reality, whether it's good or bad. And so he's very much in present tense. Whereas I very rarely dissociate, and he usually dissociates. So it's kind of funny, not usually, but he dissociates a lot more than I do. So, because I was just trying to say there's different attributes. You can be in the present moment and be completely dissociated.
Yeah.
And that's why I think like screens
Hmm.
are awful because they put you in the present moment, but you're not actually there.
Hmm.
And they're giving tons and tons of dopamine hits.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. And that's what I was just going to say, that she was talking about on that podcast yesterday. She
Yeah,
was like, social media is actually super
100%.
dangerous because
Yeah.
you're getting a consistent dopamine hit. Every time you scroll, you have a
Yeah.
new dopamine hit. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times, and this was her words, she's like, a lot of times, a lot of us will keep scrolling past the amount of time that we want to. And we get to a point where we don't even like social media anymore, but we're
Yeah.
still on it because
Yeah.
that we're looking for that dopamine hit still.
Mhm.
And that's when you know that you're addicted. And she was talking about her own addiction. She was talking about how she was completely and utterly addicted to romance novels, so much to
Mhm.
the point that she would ignore her family
Yeah.
because she just wanted to be reading her romance novel. And she
Yeah.
realized, and she's a therapist, okay? So she realized that this is what she was doing. I don't know how long she let it go on for. She didn't say, but it had to have been for a little, at least 30 days, I would say.
Mhm.
But she was saying that she had to take the romance novel and put it down. Like she said, 30 days I'm fasting from this and I'm not doing this because
Mhm.
I realize that I am creating this dopamine hit in my brain every time I pick up a romance novel. And she was like, I don't even enjoy any of it anymore except for I know where the climax is, because a romance novel, there's a total sequence to how to write a romance novel. And so she would just open the book to the climax, and that's all she wanted. Right. And so she was just looking for that dopamine hit. She realized that she didn't even care about the people in the book. She didn't really care about the storyline. She just wanted the climax, right? Like, and that's when it's like, ooh, I'm addicted. I'm
Yeah.
addicted to a certain kind of dopamine here. And it's time to
Yeah.
just stop this for about 30 days and see, okay, am I craving this? If you're craving something, you know you are addicted to it.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. If you're sitting there and you're going, oh, I can't wait until I can open my phone, or I can't wait until I can watch TV, or I can't wait until I can XYZ. You're addicted. Like that
I
you're
think
seeking that dopamine.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with the phone is that you don't even realize.
Hmm.
Like I go on my phone for one thing and then all of a sudden I'm scrolling. Like, what am I doing? Why am I
Eh,
scrolling? This is
yeah.
not why I came on my phone. And I'm one of those people that I hate scrolling social media, but I find myself doing it without thinking about it. And
Hmm.
I'm just, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I worry about kids more than anything because I didn't have phones
Right.
growing up
Yeah. We
at
didn't have
all.
social media. Like we didn't have it
No,
until I was in college when Facebook
yeah,
became a thing, right?
me
So,
too. I got
yeah.
my Facebook account in college.
Hmm.
And so the kids, like we weren't programmed
Hmm.
to have phones and social medias. So the kids nowadays that are programmed to have it, like I can't even imagine what it's going to be like for them as adults, like trying to overcome this. Like, I don't know. It's interesting though, because my daughter has decided she hates screens, and it's really weird. But yeah, I think the whole social media thing with like TikTok and Reels, like it's genius because like people used to like couch rot watching TV,
Hmm.
and now they screen rot anywhere on their phone watching reels that last typically 30 seconds, and like that's way more dopamine than a TV show, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think the younger generation is going to figure it out faster. I feel like
yeah.
I do truly believe that. Somebody said this to me recently where they were like, "I'm so worried about the younger generation. They're going to have so much trauma, blah blah blah. All these screens, blah blah blah." And it's kind of like they were like, I'm so worried. And I was like, I'm not. They've already broken that chain. And that just flew out of my mouth. It wasn't like something that I
Mhm.
premeditated thinking about. I was like, no, they've already broken it. And I was like, wait, what? Why did I say that? I truly believe that the frequency of the younger generation is much higher. You
Mhm.
can feel, I don't know if you can feel, the last week has been a big frequency change. I can
Yeah.
feel it mainly in my legs because I
Mhm.
can feel some big releases happening daily, minute by minute, second by second, where I'll have like, oh, I had a big energy release, or I just accepted new energy in. So I do believe that the younger generation came in on a higher frequency. And so I personally think that it comes down to like, they're going to figure it out sooner than we did.
Mhm.
I mean, look at like the whole, what's the word? Right now we're going through this. I want to eat cleaner. I want to put skincare products that are cleaner, right? Like our generation started that. Millennials really started that because we were looking at what our parents gave us and we were like, ooh, hamburger helper. That's not good for
Mhm.
me, right? But
Yeah.
our parents didn't even think about it. They were just like, here's food, here's dinner for tonight. And our generation woke up and we were like, wait a minute, this isn't good for us. This doesn't feel good when we eat it.
Yeah.
We want to do something different for ourselves and younger generations. And so I do feel like our generation woke up sooner to that stuff. And look, because like I talk to my parents about that. I look at how my parents eat. My parents eat like 5 year olds. Like they eat like fish sticks and like all that stuff. And I'm like, how do they eat that? But it's because they haven't woken up to the fact that these
Mm.
things were not they're not actually food, right? Like they haven't woken up to that. But our generation woke up and we were like, ooh, we don't want to put all this crap on our skin. We want to take care of our bodies. And I think the younger generation, I say this because I look at just how kids are. I feel like they're just more connected with energy than any
Hmm.
generation has before.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
whether I'm right or wrong, it doesn't matter, but that's just what I see.
Hmm. Yeah, and hopefully, because yeah, there's definitely a lot of programming that comes with the whole screen thing.
Hmm.
And to me, like I've never been a big TV movie screen person because I'm like, I'd rather live my life than watch some
Sure.
fake person live their life. Even
Sure.
like with fantasy books, like there's very few, or not fantasy, fiction books.
Hmm.
There's very few books I've actually read because I'm like, I'm just reading about some fake person's life, whereas I could live mine.
Right.
And that's a big like belief system of mine.
Hmm.
And so like when me and my partner fall into like these slumps where we're on our screens more, or watching TV shows more, or like Christmas time, I definitely get into like all the Hallmark Christmas movies. So
Hmm.
me and him watch lots of Hallmark Christmas movies this Christmas.
I'm sure he
And
loves that.
well, he did. That's the crazy part is that I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna do this and watch this movie. He's like, no, don't watch them without me. And I
Oh,
was
that's
like, oh,
funny.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're so
So
corny to me. I can't do it.
I love them. And yeah, he enjoyed, I think there was one where he was like, oh my God, like this is like really bad.
Yeah, they're so
Um,
corny. I have a hard time.
yeah. And yeah, I can't remember which one it was, but it was like he couldn't sit through it without making fun of it.
Hmm.
And so that was like my rule. I'm like, I enjoy the corny,
Yeah,
cheesy.
yeah, yeah.
And so I'm like, if you're making fun of it, you can't watch with me. And so that was where that came up in that movie. I'm like, you can't, you have to stop.
You have to stop. Yeah, you're not allowed in the room if you can do
I
that.
can't remember what movie it was. It was only one that he complained about. And didn't complain, he made fun of.
Hmm.
But yeah, the rest of them he wanted to watch for whatever reason. But yeah, so when I get into like my Hallmark Christmas movies, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I could be living Christmas. I could be living my Hallmark Christmas movie. Like, why am I watching it? And so I definitely have like fixation on I want to live my life. I don't want to be on a screen
Yeah.
watching
Well, I mean,
people.
the thing is like in a movie, like you're going to have more dopamine hits than you are in your
100%.
regular life, right? Because regular life can sometimes just be like, oh, I have to do the dishes, or not have to, but the
Yeah.
dishes need to get done. I have to do the laundry, like all that stuff. Like, that's
Mhm.
not always part of the dopamine hit, right? And so it can be, but like you really gotta like pay attention to the here and now and the present moment in order for it to become the dopamine hit. Because I
Mhm.
gotta tell you, like I truly believe my meditations are dopamine hits for me today. And I'm just
Yeah.
sitting there doing nothing, right? But I crave them, and I
Mhm.
really crave them when I'm like, ooh, I don't feel good. I crave them. I crave that time to just sit and be, because that's when my body has a moment to relax into the present moment. And when you relax into the present moment, you release energy that you didn't need, and you
Mhm.
can feel it happen. And that I crave those moments. Like
Mhm.
I've taught my body to crave those moments. So
Mhm.
you can get addicted to things like just about anything, let's be honest. But
Oh,
yeah,
100%.
getting addicted to, you can get addicted to the present moment and how
Mhm.
that feels and what that's like. But
Yeah,
most of us don't understand what that is. Myself included at times, right? Like I still find myself running to the future or the past and not focusing on what's happening right here, right now.
for sure. Yeah.
So Yeah. So, with that, I think that's a good place to end. But, friends, if you're listening to us on YouTube, go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. And then, if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, go ahead and give us a 5 star and also let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. So, with that, we're going to call TMI Advice You Didn't Want a wrap for today. See everyone next time. Thanks so much for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue hanging out with us, and don't forget to subscribe.